Another loss for the Warriors last night. They fall by 10 in Dallas. And as we're going to break down, we'll give you all the numbers. We'll look at the standings. But to maybe succinctly tell you what that game meant, welcome to the bottom half of the play-in tournament, Golden State Warriors.
Pretty much.
Because it's going to be difficult for you to, first of all, fall out of the play-in tournament. The Rockets have been playing better, but they still have a ton of ground to make up. And secondly, it's going to be difficult for you to climb out of the, at best, 9 seed. It looks like you're either going to be the 9 or the 10. The Lakers will be the other. You're going to play them either in L.A. or here in San Francisco for the 9-10 game in the play-in, and we'll go from there. But with that loss, without Steph, without Draymond, it's not quite official just yet, Dibs, but welcome to the 9-10 game of the play-in tournament.
A long way to go, and crazy things can happen, but based on where you are now, and Dallas holds the tiebreaker over you, and they hold the second tiebreaker over you. They hold a 3-game lead over you, which is really 4 games when you think about the tiebreaker factor. And yeah, you and the Lakers, now the Warriors and Lakers are tied in the loss column, so you might fight for the 9. You're probably not getting the 8. The 7 is battling the 6, so the 6-7 thing, you're 4 games back of that, and you don't have those tiebreakers either. So As you look at it now, after last night, it looks a little bit grim. And the good news is you still hold a 4-game lead over Houston to at least secure the 10 seed, although that's not locked up either.
No, not quite. You are 34-31. The Rockets are 30-35. So you're right. 4-game lead there. The Rockets do have a relatively rough schedule coming up. I also think it's kind of funny. We've all talked about how the Warriors have an easy end-of-season schedule. It's not as easy as I think a lot of us have made it out to be. We can run down some of the games that they do have coming up, but they got a lot of postseason teams on the way, and a lot of them are on the road. Oddly enough, though, that might be a good thing for the Warriors.
Right.
But focusing on what happened in Dallas last night to begin here, Dibs, and it's Willard and Dibs on 95.7 The Game. Marc Grandi in for Mark Willard today. Pleased to be with Dibs again here on 95.7 The Game. The Warriors were in this thing last night in Dallas. It was hanging around a 5, 6, 8-point game for much of the second half. There was a run for the Mavericks to begin the second quarter, a run as well to begin the fourth. But the Warriors were down 6 going into the fourth quarter. And they put out there on the floor the unit of Chris Paul, Brandon Podziemski, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, and Trayce Jackson-Davis. And I get you're without Steph, you're without Draymond, you don't really have a ton of options. That unit hasn't played together much this season. And in fact, that unit is your worst 5-man unit in terms of units that have played at least 10 minutes, which I know is not that many minutes, and it's a very small sample size. They have an offensive rating of 86.2 and a defensive rating of 171.4.
Whoa.
That is a net rating of negative 85.2. That 5-man unit of Chris Paul, Brandon Podziemski, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, and Trayce Jackson-Davis. And again, that's a very small sample size. They've only played that 5-man group in 4 different games this season for a total of 15 minutes. So very small sample size. Those statistics can be very misleading, and they can change really quickly. But when you consider what some of those players were doing throughout this game, Dibs, you had Andrew Wiggins through 3 quarters, 10 points on 3 of 9 shooting. Klay Thompson, 8 points on 3 of 8 shooting. How about that? Klay only 8 shot attempts through 3 quarters in a game where Steph Curry and Draymond Green are not in. Brandon Podziemski had 8 points on 3 of 10 shooting through 3 quarters. And it's a 6-point game going into the fourth. And Jonathan Kuminga, the guy who had been your only consistent offense all game long, he had 21 points through 3 quarters. 2 of 2 from downtown, 5 of 6 from the free throw line. Your only consistent offensive threat all night long, and I get it's his normal rotation. He closes the third, does not open the fourth, but my God, the guy is 21 years old. He's played over 40 minutes once this season. It was the double overtime game against the Lakers when just about everybody's playing over 40 minutes in that game. Would it kill him to start him in that fourth quarter and see if you've got a push in you to win the game? If it doesn't work, you fall behind by 12 with 4 minutes left. All right, wave the white flag, bring him out. Take him out, put him on the bench, and save those 4 minutes on his 21-year-old legs. I get it. And I get why Steve Kerr does not want to do that sort of thing and run any of his guys into the ground. But you're playing for your life right now this season. Put your best guys out there. Come on. I want to see JK.
That's a little overdramatic. You're not playing for your life. You're actually probably not playing for anything.
You were last night. Did you get that win? You're suddenly what? You're
still the 9, right?
You would be a game and a half behind the Mavericks.
Right.
There's a legitimate chance you could get up to the 8, and being the 8 is 1,000 times better than being the 9 or the 10.
It is, but
you had a lot to play for.
You can't tell me that putting Kuminga out there for an extra 4 minutes early in that third quarter would have made the difference. You're spitballing, and I appreciate it, and he was your best player, but you aren't chasing wins. And Steve Kerr has told you that because it's not what they do. They don't chase wins in game 66 of the regular season.
I don't think he would admit to that.
Well, he's admitted to it before.
Yeah, not about this specific game.
Right, and if he was chasing the win, he would have put him out there and he would have played him for 42 minutes.
Are you sure, or you think it was just a bad decision by Steve?
I don't think it was a bad decision. I don't think that he looked at the game and thought, Jonathan Kuminga, we're going to go ahead and hold him back because it's what we do. It's just the regular rotation, and you played the guys that you thought could go out there and get it done, and you leaned on veterans, and the veterans were the ones who didn't make the plays. The veterans were the ones who didn't perform. And if you would have played Jonathan Kuminga, all 12 minutes of the fourth quarter, do you win that game? Maybe not.
Gives them a better chance. I'll tell you what, the Mavericks probably don't go on an 11-0 run early in the fourth and blow this game out of reach.
Right.
And with Kuminga not on the floor, and then you bring Kuminga in, and guess what? The game's already over.
It was pretty much over at that point.
You played him then meaningless minutes after you got down by 15. Play him the minutes earlier. You get a chance to maybe fight back in this game. And if it doesn't work out, okay, it doesn't work out. Don't play him the final 6 minutes, but play him the first 6 minutes of the quarter and see what happens.
I love it. You're ripping Kerr. This is great. Go after him.
I am hesitant to do that, but I think last night it fits.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. This isn't the most meaningful game of the season, but it was a really, really important one. Now that you lost it, your other games against the Mavericks don't mean nearly as much, but going into last night, you had 3 games against Dallas, and you were only down by 2.5 games. If you just win all 3 of those games, you could leapfrog Dallas on that alone.
Right, and now you have 2 more games against Dallas, and if you win both of them, then it goes down to the conference tiebreaker.
And Dallas has the tiebreaker.
Dallas has the tiebreaker currently.
You're essentially, there's very, very, very little chance that you can pass Dallas in the standings now. Very little. But they have 17 games left, something like that. They would have to go 6-11.
Well, 2 of those losses would be against you.
Yes.
So, and those are the 2 that you're probably counting on when you have Steph and Draymond back. And, if asked, would he say that he regretted sitting out Kuminga? And it was only 3 minutes, and I'm looking at it here. It was 3 minutes and 43 seconds.
He did call a timeout. I will credit Steve Kerr. He called a timeout in that fourth quarter with about 10 minutes to go in the fourth. So after 2 minutes of the fourth, he called a timeout and said, all right, guys, let's figure this thing out. Take a deep breath. Come on, down 10. But he didn't make any substitutions coming out of that timeout. Everyone on the floor was still the same. And then later on, he then brought Kuminga back in. But at that point, they were down by 15.
Yeah, 5 missed shots and a turnover between that time and the time where Kuminga came back. So
great.
Is that Kerr's fault? Is that Kuminga's fault? No. Let's blame the veterans. Let's blame Klay Thompson. Let's put the blame where it rightly falls, where out of the timeout, Klay, 20-footer, miss. Gets his own rebound. 12-footer, miss. GP2, 3-pointer, miss. Pods, 3-pointer, miss. Chris Paul, miss. Warriors turnover. Chris Paul, technical foul. And then
Kuminga comes in.
Right. So you go from you were down 6 at the end of 3, and by the time he came back in, you were down by 15.
Yep.
So -9 without him. You're down 15 now with 8 and change left to go. The game was mostly over.
Yeah, we could talk about protecting Kuminga's minutes and making sure he stays fresh and all of that, but guess what? Once you put him back in down 15, those are relatively meaningless minutes. Just don't play him then.
Right.
The game's over.
And he winds up a +5 the rest of the way. Although he came out, I'm sure, late in that game. Yeah. Kuminga was out, and then Kuminga came back in. But I would look not at the fact that Kuminga wasn't in there. If you're relying on Jonathan Kuminga to be the one to come in and carry you, then what are we even talking about? You've got Chris Paul, You've got Klay Thompson, 2 Hall of Famers. You've got Andrew Wiggins. Everybody wants to talk about two-way Wiggs, former number 1 overall pick, NBA champion. These guys are on the court. So, yes, Kuminga could have played all 12 minutes of the fourth, but you're relying on veterans to carry you, and the veterans didn't carry you.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying. Like, in order for something to be a bad decision or a mistake, and, hindsight is 20/20, there has to be a bad option and then the good option. And you're right. I mean, the bad option was the veterans who struggled in this game. My point is that you could see that through 3 quarters, and you go back to the well again. You go back to Andrew Wiggins. You go back to Klay Thompson, both of whom clearly didn't have it. I thought we were going to see 25 Klay shots last night, because what are the other options?
Right.
He put up 13, 8 through the first 3 quarters.
Yep.
I thought we were going to see him hoist over and over, and maybe he only goes like 11 for 25.
8
maybe.
for 24 or whatever. Yeah,
whatever
I'm with you.
Maybe. And okay, you lose that game anyway, but I thought we were going to see a little bit more aggression from Klay. He was passive through the first 3 quarters, which oddly enough is kind of what Warrior fans had been asking him to do for a lot of this season. But without Klay, or without Steph, without Draymond, I think he should have been a little bit more aggressive. And through 3 quarters, he wasn't. So it's an opportunity to give the ball to your stud on offense, and through 3 quarters, your stud on offense was Jonathan Kuminga. He was the only guy fighting for what looked like the whole squad, for the whole team, in a game that was, as I think, really, really meaningful. But Dibs, it sounds to me like you don't think this game meant all that much.
It doesn't mean that much. Honestly, if you were going to catch Dallas, that win would have been a big step toward catching Dallas, but I don't think you're going to catch Dallas anyway.
Well, not anymore.
Well, I don't think that you were going to go 12 minutes of Kuminga in the fourth and put everybody out there. If you were going to do that, then you would have played 6 guys or 7 guys. But the Warriors themselves didn't play that game like there was much urgency. You mentioned Klay, 3 of 13. He was 0 of 5 in the fourth quarter. 0 for 5.
And it was his shots in that early fourth that kind of led to the Dallas run.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if Klay's not going to play with that level of urgency, do we expect Steve Kerr to just put Kuminga out there for 12 minutes and go all out for a game that it's just a regular season game? And even if you get by Dallas, you're 1.5 back, you're still in the play-in game. It's not like this was an elimination game.
Yeah,
this was just another regular.
It eliminated you from the top half of the play-in, essentially.
It's just another regular season game.
I think it meant a whole lot more than that.
They didn't think so.
And I get that once Steph and Draymond are listed as out for this game, maybe your expectations change, but you're down 6 going into the fourth against a fully healthy Dallas team in Dallas, led by your 21-year-old Jonathan Kuminga. Put him out there. Let him go crazy. Ride him until the wheels fall off. If the wheels fall off, oh well, he's 21 years old. Go get him next time. You got 2 days off before the Laker game. Guess what? You got a whole long offseason coming up. I wanted to see more Kuminga. I wanted to see more Kuminga in that game, and while it was disappointing specifically for last night, I do think what he was able to do last night gives the Warriors more confidence and a more concrete plan for the offseason ahead, and we can get more into that.